You thought Clint Eastwood was the definition of calm, wisdom, and power, untouchable. But guess what? At 95, the Hollywood legend finally dropped the act, exposing a side darker than anyone ever imagined. Now he's calling out 6 stars, people who smiled beside him in fame and fortune, and then stabbed him straight in the back. Once you hear their names, you'll get why Clint Eastwood never forgave, never forgot, and never looked back. First up, Leonardo DiCaprio, the golden boy himself. But behind that charm, Clint saw something that changed everything. What could possibly make Clint Eastwood storm off his own movie set? The answer is Leo. When J. Edgar started filming back in 2010, Hollywood buzzed, the calmest director teaming up with one of the most intense actors alive. But insiders whisper it was a silent disaster from day one. Leo showed up like a detective on a mission. Folders packed with notes, research papers, even marked up FBI memos. The crew noticed Clint's patience start to fade fast. Clint once joked, "He came in like a detective trying to solve me." But that joke had an edge. Irritation was simmering. Then came the breaking point, the emotional breakdown scene. Leo nailed it in one take, raw, flawless, pure emotion. The whole room froze. Clint muttered, "Perfect, cut." But Leo wasn't done. He wanted another, then another, until the 6th take. By then, Clint wasn't even behind the camera anymore. He was off to the side, coffee in hand, face like stone. Someone asked if he was okay, and all he said was, "He's still searching for something." What did Clint really mean by that? When J. Edgar rapped, there was nothing but silence, that heavy kind that says everything without a word. Casting meetings after that told the same story. Every time DiCaprio's name came up, Clint just shook his head. "Great actor," he'd mutter, "but not my kind." That was it. The door slammed shut. They never reunited, never shared a stage, never exchanged another word. Sure, Leo got his Oscar years later, but Clint never called again. For him, perfection isn't about doing it twice. It's about nailing it once and never wasting another second. Now number 2, Michael Moore, the man who poked the bear one too many times. When Moore compared American Sniper to Nazi propaganda, he might as well have detonated any chance of respect between them. Clint didn't shout, didn't curse. He just froze him out completely, like Moore no longer existed. But that feud didn't start there. Oh no, it had roots. The bad blood began back in 2005, when Clint took the stage at the National Board of Review Awards. With that steel gaze and a voice that made the room go cold, he growled, "If Michael Moore ever shows up at my door with a camera, I'll kill him." The crowd laughed nervously, but Clint didn't. He stared ahead, stone-faced, and walked off the stage. That wasn't humor. That was a warning. To really understand that grudge, you have to get what Clint stands for: discipline, loyalty, quiet strength, and old-school honor. Moore's documentaries, especially Fahrenheit 9/11, hit Clint as pure grandstanding, politics dressed up as art. Clint once told a close friend, he sees soldiers as pawns, I see them as heroes. It was never about politics, it was about respect. Almost 10 years later, Moore mocked American Sniper again, saying it reminded him of the Nazi sniper movie in Inglourious Basterds. He claimed it was a joke, but Clint's crew said he was furious. "He doesn't forget insults," one longtime collaborator said, and you better believe they meant it. Clint Eastwood doesn't argue when he's done, he deletes, and that's exactly what he did with Michael Moore. Ever since that tweet, Moore's name has vanished from Clint's world like it never existed. Clint's worked with liberals, conservatives, and everyone in between, but there's one rule he never bends: you don't disrespect soldiers. Moore didn't just cross that line, he stomped all over it. These days, if someone even dares to mention Michael Moore around Clint, the conversation ends right there. No exceptions. Now number 3, Barbra Streisand, the perfectionist who managed to provoke the cowboy himself. Even after 9 decades in Hollywood, her name still makes Clint's jaw tighten like steel. She's the one person who got under his skin so deep that he reportedly refuses to even say her name in interviews. What started as creative tension turned into one of Hollywood's iciest feuds, and it still hasn't thawed. It all began in the early 1980s, when both were making their move from actors to directors. Streisand was famous for control, 40, 50, even 60 takes just to capture one tiny expression. Clint, on the other hand, lived by a whole different code. 2 takes max, that's it. He'd been known to say, if it's not real the first time, it's not worth filming. To him, it was about truth, not polish. But Barbra? She represented everything Clint couldn't stand about the new Hollywood: control freaks, vanity, endless overthinking. By the early 90s, that quiet tension had turned into open contempt. When The Prince of Tides failed to earn Streisand a Best Director nomination in 1992, Clint was overheard saying, maybe if she made decisions faster, she'd finish more than 3 films in 15 years. That comment spread through the industry like wildfire, and the damage was done. Then came The Bridges of Madison County, the project that shattered whatever fragile piece was left. Streisand had been attached to direct it for years, but walked away after too much indecision. Clint swooped in, rewrote the script, and delivered a quiet, emotional masterpiece that critics loved. That move didn't just win hearts, it sealed one of the coldest rivalries Hollywood's ever seen. The Bridges of Madison County didn't just earn Meryl Streep an Oscar nomination, it gave Clint Eastwood his quiet revenge. He didn't need to say a word. The film spoke for him. Since then, he and Barbra Streisand have kept their distance completely. No public run-ins, no small talk, no fake smiles. To Clint, she became the symbol of everything wrong with modern filmmaking: hesitation, obsession with control, and the death of pure instinct. In his world, you pull the trigger once, not 50 times. Now, number 4, Tommy Lee Jones, the alpha Clint couldn't tame. From day one on the 1993 set of In the Line of Fire, sparks were already flying. According to one crew member, Clint leaned over and muttered, 2 bulls in 1 pen, this won't last. And he was right. At first, everyone thought they'd be a perfect match, 2 legends, 1 screen. But behind the camera, it turned into a silent duel for dominance. Jones wasn't the kind to take quiet direction. He barked orders, argued about lines, and kept performing long after Clint had called cut. Clint, known for his calm, controlled sets, just stood there watching, stone-faced. One technician said he'd stay in character between takes, and Clint would just stare like, "What are you doing?" You could feel the tension thick in the air. The clash reached its boiling point during an intense confrontation scene. Jones loomed over Clint, fully in character, spitting every line like a challenge. Clint yelled, "Cut!" But Jones didn't stop. He kept glaring straight into Clint's eyes, refusing to back down. The entire crew froze, holding their breath. After a long, awkward silence, Clint turned to his assistant and muttered, "Life's too short for that kind of theater." Then he calmly walked off set. From that moment, the decision was made. When casting directors later suggested Tommy Lee Jones for future Eastwood projects, Clint didn't even hesitate. "He's a great actor," he said, "but we don't speak the same language." Translation? Never again. The two have never reunited, never shared a panel, never even mentioned each other in interviews. In Clint's world, there's only room for one alpha, and he's the one calling cut. Now, number 5, Richard Burton, the man who nearly pushed Clint's patience to the breaking point. Clint Eastwood isn't known for losing his cool, but Burton came dangerously close to making it happen on the 1968 set of Where Eagles Dare. The issue wasn't fame or ego, it was work ethic. Burton showed up late, slurring lines, sometimes reeking of last night's liquor. Clint, already on set before sunrise, would just stand there, waiting, jaw tight, eyes cold, watching Burton stumble take after take. One crew member said, "You could see the respect draining from Clint's face like water." Burton was in the middle of his fiery marriage to Elizabeth Taylor, and every night ended the same way: loud arguments, heavy drinking, and chaos that spilled onto set the next morning. Clint had seen plenty of Hollywood drama before, but Burton's behavior tested his patience like no one ever had. By the late 90s, Clint Eastwood and Charlton Heston were two titans, old-school icons who'd shaped Hollywood's image of toughness and grit. You'd think they'd see eye to eye, right? Not even close. Their feud wasn't born from a movie set. It came from a clash of principles that cut deep. It all started when Clint publicly distanced himself from political extremes, saying he wanted less noise and more reason. Heston, then head of the NRA, took that as a jab, and he fired back hard. At a private industry dinner, witnesses say Heston raised a glass and said, "Some men forget what America stands for once they get comfortable." People turned to Clint, and his face said it all. That line hit him like a bullet. From that night on, things were never the same. Clint didn't respond publicly, but in private, he made sure their paths would never cross again. "I don't do speeches," he told a friend. "I do work." That was Clint's way of ending the conversation. Heston, on the other hand, doubled down, dropping subtle digs in interviews, calling out actors who've gone soft. The tension between them symbolized a deeper divide. Two versions of American masculinity clashing under the same Hollywood sun. One fighting for tradition, the other pushing for quiet independence. By the early 2000s, any chance of reconciliation was gone. They never spoke again, never shook hands, never even shared the same room. And when reporters later asked Clint about Heston's legacy, he paused, gave that famous squint, and simply said, "Some men don't know when the show's over." That was it. The final shot fired in one of Hollywood's coldest silent wars. Clint Eastwood has always respected strong personalities, but Sean Penn tested that respect until it snapped. Their tension started during the 2003 filming of Mystic River, a movie that earned Penn an Oscar, and Clint a permanent grudge. On camera, Penn was electric, intense, raw, completely consumed by the role. But off camera, it was a different story. Crew members whispered that Penn kept questioning Clint's calm directing style, asking for more takes, more emotion, more control. "He directs like he's napping," Penn supposedly joked once, and that line made its way back to Clint fast. You can bet he didn't laugh. For Clint, filmmaking was about instinct. Trust the moment, trust the actor, and move on. But Penn, he wanted chaos, fire, and constant do-overs. The two clashed quietly but fiercely, their stares during filming sharper than any words. One assistant recalled, "When Clint said cut, Sean would just keep going. It felt like a duel between silence and noise." Things reached their peak after Mystic River's massive success. At the Oscars, Clint congratulated Penn publicly, but insiders say backstage was icy. Clint's team claimed he felt disrespected, like Penn turned his set into a battlefield of ego. And while Penn thanked him on stage, he never called him again. And Clint never forgot that either. Over the years, when asked about working with Penn again, Clint's answer never changed. A slow shake of the head and a quiet, "Once is enough." Simple, sharp, final. Because in Eastwood's world, there's no room for drama when the camera's rolling, and no second chances when the trust is broken. Clint Eastwood doesn't chase hype, and Tom Cruise is pure hype. When whispers spread in the late 2000s that the two might team up for a major war film, Hollywood went wild. Everyone imagined the ultimate power duo, the calm legend and the unstoppable showman. But behind the scenes, that dream crashed before it even began. According to insiders, the trouble started in early meetings. Clint wanted raw realism, no big stunts, no over-the-top hero shots. But Tom, he came in ready to run, shout, and rewrite half the script. One producer said, Tom wanted fireworks, Clint wanted silence. That clash of styles set the tone fast. During a heated pitch session, Cruise supposedly told Clint, "Audiences want energy." Clint didn't even flinch. He just leaned back, stared him down, and said, "They want truth." The room went dead quiet. That was it. Meeting over. After that day, Clint stopped returning calls. His team politely said the vision didn't align, but everyone in town knew what that really meant. Clint had cut ties. When the project eventually moved forward without him, Clint never mentioned Tom's name again. And when Cruise later praised Clint in an interview, saying he was the kind of filmmaker I admire, Clint stayed silent. No acknowledgement, no nod, nothing. People close to Clint say Cruise became a symbol for everything he avoided: flash over feeling, noise over nuance, performance over purpose. As one longtime crew member put it, Clint doesn't chase spotlights, he builds them. And he sure as hell doesn't share them. In Clint's book, you can be the biggest star in the world, but if you don't respect the craft, you're not stepping on his set, not even for a second. For decades, Clint Eastwood and Jack Nicholson were two sides of the same Hollywood coin, both rebels, both legends, both impossible to ignore. They shared whiskey, laughs, and even a few wild poker nights in the 70s. But as the years rolled on, that friendship cracked. And what started as mutual respect turned into quiet resentment. It began with Unforgiven. Jack had been approached early on for a key role, but Clint decided to direct and star in it himself. When the movie became a massive hit, Jack reportedly told friends, "That was supposed to be my part." Clint heard about it and didn't like the tone one bit. From then on, the warmth between them turned cold fast. Things only got worse a few years later when Jack publicly joked that Clint's directing style was so quiet you'd think the film was making itself. It was meant to be funny, but Clint didn't find it amusing. One producer said, "You could see the shift. Clint stopped inviting him to screenings, stopped mentioning him altogether. He just erased him, the way only Clint can." Their last real encounter was at an awards gala in the early 2000s. The two legends crossed paths near the bar. Jack raised his glass, grinning. "We're still the last of the real ones, huh?" Clint just nodded. No smile, no words, then turned and walked away. That silence said everything. Insiders say Nicholson later tried to smooth things over, but Clint was already done. To him, loyalty wasn't about friendship. It was about respect. And when that's broken, there's no fixing it. As one longtime associate put it, when Clint closes the door, it doesn't creak, it slams. In the end, Jack stayed Hollywood's wild card, and Clint remained its iron will. Two titans who once laughed together, now ghosts in each other's stories. There was a time when Clint Eastwood saw a bit of himself in Mel Gibson, rugged, rebellious, walking that fine line between genius and chaos. Hollywood expected them to work together sooner or later. Two powerhouse directors, two faces of old-school toughness. It sounded unstoppable. But what really happened between them was anything but friendly. It all started in the early 2000s, when Clint quietly passed on a project that Mel was desperate to direct, a dark western that would have brought the two together for the first time. When Clint walked away, Mel took it personally. He began telling people that Clint wasn't hungry anymore, that he'd gone soft with age. Those words made their way back to Eastwood, and they hit hard. Then came the scandals, Mel's infamous public outbursts, and the chaos that followed. Studios started pulling back, but Clint didn't say a thing publicly. He didn't need to. Friends say his silence spoke volumes. One close confidant revealed, "Clint told us, a man's reputation isn't built on how loud he talks, it's how steady he stands." That was his way of closing the book on Mel for good. Years later, when Gibson tried to make a comeback and reached out about a possible collaboration, Clint's answer was short and cold. "Not my kind of story. That's Eastwood code for never happening." The two never crossed paths again. No events, no calls, not even a polite nod at award shows. Mel went his way, chasing redemption, while Clint stayed focused on his craft, never looking back. To this day, people in Hollywood still whisper about that lost collaboration, What could have been a powerhouse pairing between two icons turned into one of the industry's most unspoken rifts. Because when Clint Eastwood draws a line, there's no crossing it. Once you lose his respect, you're out. No second chances, no apologies, no return. At first, Clint Eastwood and Kevin Costner were the perfect duo, mentor and student, two men cut from the same weathered cloth. When they teamed up for A Perfect World in 1993, the chemistry was instant. Clint directed, Kevin starred, and the set felt like a passing of the torch. But by the time the cameras stopped rolling, that torch had burned the bridge between them. It started small, creative disagreements that slowly turned personal. Clint wanted restraint, silence, emotion told through stillness. Costner wanted more grit, more dialogue, more fight. Crew members said you could feel the friction in the air. They respected each other, one insider shared, but they were both used to being the boss. During one crucial scene, Clint asked Kevin to tone it down. Less talk, more feeling. Kevin fired back. "You can't bottle emotion, Clint." The crew went dead quiet. Eastwood didn't raise his voice. He just stared for a few seconds, nodded once and said, "Then do it your way." But everyone could tell. Something had snapped. When the film wrapped, there were no drinks, no laughs, no goodbye photos. Clint promoted the movie alone, keeping Costner's name out of his interviews completely. Years later, when reporters asked about working together again, Clint simply replied, "He's talented, but we see the world differently." Costner, for his part, once told a magazine, "Clint taught me a lot, mostly what not to do." That line sealed it. Since then, they've never shared a stage or a word in public. What was meant to be a legacy connection turned into a silent rivalry between two men who refused to bend. And in Hollywood, when pride meets pride, someone always walks away. In this case, it was Clint Eastwood, leaving Kevin Costner in the dust, proving once again that he doesn't lose control. He just moves on. When Clint Eastwood cast Matt Damon in Invictus back in 2009, everyone thought it was a match made in Hollywood heaven, the legend and the golden boy, teaming up to tell a story about honor and resilience. But what looked perfect on paper turned tense behind the camera, and the quiet storm that followed made sure they'd never work together again. At first, Clint admired Damon's focus, always early, always prepared. But as filming went on, Matt's habit of questioning every detail started to wear thin. "He's got notes for everything," one crew member said. Every scene, every shot, he wanted to debate it. Clint's rule has always been simple. You trust the director, or you find another one. The turning point came during a locker room scene that Clint wanted shot in one take. Raw, emotional, real. Matt disagreed. He thought the moment needed more intensity, maybe another angle. Clint listened quietly, then said, "We've got it." But Damon pushed again. That's when Clint gave him the look, the same silent stare that could freeze a room. "You want another take?" he said finally. "Direct it yourself." The crew didn't move a muscle. After that day, the tension never left. Clint finished the film like a pro, but the energy between them was gone. When Invictus hit theaters and earned awards buzz, both men stayed polite in public, but insiders knew they'd stop talking the moment the cameras stopped rolling. Years later, when Matt mentioned Clint in an interview, calling him a man of few words and fewer explanations, it didn't sound like praise. And Clint? He never responded, not once. That silence said it all. In Eastwood's world, there's no need for arguments or grudges. Just one quiet rule that never changes. If you question his instincts, you don't get a second chance. And Matt Damon learned that lesson the hard way, one take at a time. Every morning on set, the crew could feel it, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Clint Eastwood didn't yell, didn't lecture. That wasn't his style. He just watched, cold and silent, his patience draining by the hour. Richard Burton stumbled in late again, lines slurred, eyes heavy, smelling like the night before. Clint, already dressed and ready since dawn, waited, disgust written all over his face. After Burton fumbled the same line for the 10th time, Clint finally muttered, "I'm getting paid by the picture, not by the hour." The crew burst out with nervous laughter, but Burton didn't crack a smile. The message hit hard, and it was clear who ran that set. Then came the breaking point. Burton was overheard calling the movie a paycheck job. To Clint, that was the ultimate slap in the face. He believed every film, even an action flick, deserved full heart and focus. When asked years later about Burton, Clint didn't sugarcoat a thing. "Talented guy," he said. "Wasted talent." That was it. No rants, no bitterness, just finality. Where Eagles Dare became a hit, but the friendship? Dead before the premiere. Clint never worked with him again, never spoke his name in interviews. For a man who uses silence like a weapon, Burton's fate was sealed. Unforgivable. There's one movie Clint Eastwood almost never mentions, Paint Your Wagon. And if you ask why, the answer comes down to one name, Jean Seberg. She wasn't just his co-star in the 1969 musical. She was the reason Clint swore he'd never mix sympathy with work again. Seberg was fragile, unpredictable, and already under FBI surveillance for her political activism. On set, her emotions swung like a pendulum. One day she'd charm the crew with laughter and grace. The next, she'd lock herself in her trailer for hours. Clint, disciplined to his core, had no patience for that kind of chaos. By the third week, he'd had enough. She'd stop mid-scene to ask about her motivation, one script supervisor recalled. Clint would just stare at the floor, waiting for her to finish. You could see him dying inside. Their working styles couldn't have been more different. She led with feelings, he led with focus. Then came the betrayal that ended it all. After the movie bombed, Seberg told reporters that Clint's wooden performance dragged the film down. That cut deep. To Clint, that wasn't criticism. It was betrayal. He'd spent months trying to keep the set together, and this was the thanks he got. From that moment, she was out of his life for good. He never mentioned her again. If her name came up, he'd change the subject, light a cigar, and walk away without a word. Years later, when news broke of Seberg's tragic death in 1979, Clint stayed silent. Friends said he looked genuinely saddened, but still, he never softened. "Some people aren't cut out for the work," he once said quietly, "and I don't need to deal with it twice." That's as close to forgiveness as Clint Eastwood ever came. So what do you think? Was Clint right to cut these people out of his life forever? Or did his silence cross the line? Let us know what you believe in the comments below, and make sure to subscribe for more untold Hollywood stories that were never meant to see the light.